Thank you for singing and playing. I'm going to continue singing the rest of the chorus, the rest of the stanzas. Or, okay, and this.
And I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, every kindred, tongue, and people, for a witness to all nations, and then shall the end come.
Thank you for singing and playing.
There it goes. Okay, let's try it again. Many years ago, when I was younger, I went on a mission trip. This was back in 1982. And I went to Lesotho for a year in the country of South Africa. It's surrounded by South Africa. It's its own country. And I went there for 1 year. And some of the things when you go on a mission trip like this, when you get to see new cultures, the way people, like to me to go to a third world country, I left Dallas on a Monday morning, got there on Friday afternoon into Lesotho, and then by Friday night I got to Emmanuel Mission. So it was a lot of airplane hops and jumps and returns and different things. It took a week to get there. So they did actually have direct flights back then, where it's 24 hours or whatever, but I wasn't on one of those. So anyway, some of the travel you get to meet, the people you get to meet, and to see how people go in churches. I'll show you some of the churches here. There were some, I don't actually have pictures, that pretty much the roofs were gone, but people still come to meet. And the first mission work in Adventist history, you know S.N. Haskell, you've heard the name? Okay, he went over there in 1896, and he had a guide there, David Kayaka, and he was his guide. He became the first Seventh-day Adventist. 4 years later, in 1899, they started the Kolo mission down in a village called Kolo in Lesotho. And I took a picture. I have a picture of that mission. We still have a church there. It's made out of huge sandstone blocks right below a real high mountain with like a cave up on it. It's a really neat area, but so dry. And Lesotho is as far south of the equator as New Mexico is north, so you end up with a lot of, the weather's opposite for one thing. So I got there in July or June, and it was cold, and there was snow on the mountain in Lesotho. The Maluti mountain range had snow on it. So some of the unique parts of their language, like Kwakwa or Kwachasnek, they'd use clicks in the language. And Ntate Makachi would be a Mr. Makachi. You have to throw a click in there with your language. But not all of it is that hard, but they do have quite a few clicks and things. I like the song you all chose, Matthew 24, about this gospel spreading to all parts of the world. We're going to be going on different mission trips here in the U.S., and whatever we do, whoever you meet, pray that you'll be an influence to somebody. You may meet someone if you stop for the restroom at the rest area, you could talk to somebody. Well, there's lots of places where you could meet people. We don't even know. Some of you have more interactions with people outside of our denomination. Others will have more, and people will be looking at you. So whatever you're going to do, wherever you go, make sure it's your goal to be a missionary for sure. Emmanuel Mission was started in 1910, 11 years after the Kolo Mission, and that was where I went. This mission station was set up for children whose parents had leprosy. They were basically had no more parents after they got sick. And so it ran for many years like that. And then even when I was there was still, the state started bringing orphans to there since leprosy pretty much was eradicated by then. And so anyway, that's what it was started from. So I'm going to show you a few slides, and I'll try to go through those, and we can see what it was like over there. Okay, oops. I guess I'm going to need this again. Lesotho is way down here, this little pink country right there. If you can see at the very bottom, it's completely surrounded by the country. Focus. Okay, this is the entrance into the capital. And mind you, this was back in 1982, so it was a bit older. This is some of the towns, dirt roads, had a few stores. The ladies, you notice, are carrying burdens on their head, water, looks like a sack of potatoes, or flour. The men don't tend to do that sort of thing, I guess. The ladies do a lot of the work there. This is a view from up on top of a mountain above Lesotho, above Emmanuel Mission, where I was. The early missionaries had planted a lot of cherry trees. These are all orchards, the rows here. And the church is over at this end, a few buildings. Children's home where I stayed was down in the trees at the back here. This circle around where the trees are was the school's property. You notice there's very few trees. It's a very barren landscape. There's the cherry trees blooming in the spring. Southern Union of Seventh-day Adventists was over in South Africa, and Lesotho Field came under that. But in 1999, it became Lesotho Conference. So they have their own conference now. There's just some birds. This one's called a hammerkop. The other one was a Cape Oriole. And we had a little cat down there that befriended us. Anyway, I'll just go quickly through some of these pictures. Something's going on. Okay, here's the showing the snow up on the. They actually have skiing somewhere up there, I heard, up in the mountains for a very limited time. Very few places in Africa have that. This is some of the students working. Looks like they're in the tomatoes there. And here's other students digging trenches. We were building a new boys' dorm. I'm just going to go quickly through these. Here's some of the forms. I mean, they're sending cinder blocks in. Some of the guys are cutting wood for the fire at the kitchen. Everything's on stoves. Here they're digging latrines. No, not a lot of running water here. The old boys' dorm is up on the right, and the cafeteria is straight ahead. And this is the new boys' dorm, digging the foundations. Here's going around the outer perimeter, starting up at the blocks. They'll pour the floor last. And there's some girls harvesting from the garden. I don't know if that's beets or something that they've picked. And here they're planting some new starts, cabbage. They do a lot of cabbage. This is inside the kitchen. That's their main stove. And if we ever did have running water, it would fill into the pipe up on top, and it would go through the stove, and it would heat, and that would be the hot water. Very seldom did they have enough water to actually get up that high. And this is inside the cafeteria. Everybody brought a little metal plate like the one there, and you had to wash your own plate, and everybody would get a scoop of meal or beans or whatever was served that day. This is another one-way bridge, no train on this one. And it's first come, first serve, ox cart or cattle or anything going across. And this lady has a grinding stone. And this is the large sandstone blocks that also was used at this mission and at Colo Mission that started in 1899. And here's some cement. We were mixed in the girls' dorm shower. We were putting a cement floor in there. Mostly everyone brought a little tub, like a communion tub that you use for foot washing. That's your shower pan. And you dip the water. There's very little water here. You saw how barren it was. This is plowing. They would hire someone out in the community that had a couple of cows, and he would come and they would disc the area up. We're back into working on cement. Mr. Leloka and I were the two maintenance persons there. Here they're putting more seeds in, and these cows will pull. I didn't realize how strong. This is a different set of cows, very strong. And I thought, oh, I can just stop them when I want. I had to run to stay with them, and my row was going back and forth. They don't stop, and cows walk faster than humans. So you have to keep moving to plow. Stay with them. On the thatch roofs, whenever you need a new roof, you don't take the old one off. You just get bundles of grass, and you see the man has a stick there with a rope on it. He pushes it down through. Someone's inside the house, and they'll come up over, and you just thread up and over different piles of grass and tie them down, and makes a pretty efficient thatched roof hut. We're back at the boys' dorm foundations. And these are the three ladies who worked in the cafeteria. And they always made bread, so I always made desserts, so I would trade them desserts for a loaf of bread. I love bread, but I didn't like making it because I did that as a kid a lot. This is the last day before I left. We were trying to finish the walls for we made a restroom addition. It wasn't on there. And Dr. Lukens had donated some money enough to buy the blocks for that. So we added that extra in the last 2 weeks before we left. And here I'm leading that first group of cows. I wasn't too used to cows. Having not been around, I kept looking back to make sure they weren't running over me. I wasn't really, I would be more used to tractors probably. And here's a couple of sheep that were out in the, you can see the thatch roof. After it turns in the sun, they all turn to about the same color of brown. Just the new roofs will have that yellowish, the brighter, newer color. Here's a 12 team of oxen. This is up in the mountain area at Pitzeng, and they were pulling a load of logs up for someone's house they'd cut somewhere. For firewood, since there's very little, the ladies will go out and gather all the manure that's dried, and then they reconstitute it with water and make it into little patties or small loaves like bread and smash it out flat, let it dry, and then they'll stack it. And for the winter, they'll have something to burn. Here you can see the thatch roof, how pieces are going on. Then they'll lay another layer and sew it on all the way to the top, and then they'll put a metal cone over the very top, and it sheds water quite well. Here's some of the teachers in the secondary school, and the building behind them was for the secondary school, the high school. And this is Mr. Leloka, the other maintenance man. This was his 5th child that he had. And this just shows one of the ladies out doing her laundry. We all had to do laundry in the same little tub. That's your wash basin and your laundry basin. It comes in handy for everything. That's one of Mr. Leloka's little boys. He found out that I sometimes had candy, and he would walk around, de pompo, and hold his hands out. It meant sweets. He wanted some candy. So he became my friend. Well, that's sideways. That was right toward the end when I was leaving. Here, hold that for a second. Hold on, technical difficulties here. Forget that one. There, these are straight. In case you're not used to this technology, these are called slides. That's all we had back in the day. All of my pictures, these were all SLR cameras with there's no such thing as viewing it. I had to take the slides, and if it was blurry, I never knew for a year till I got home and developed them. All of it was slide film, Kodachrome 64 mostly. And like that bee, I just happened to get him focused, but I have a bunch of shots that weren't because I was trying. But you had to be really careful on your shots. You didn't just shoot 20 shots. And for the cost of it and stuff, back then every shot counted. So if there's some bad shots or whatever, that's just what it was. So for the baptisms, we'd walk over to the little river, and you can see behind, that's a very little trickle. We would go on Thursdays, the boys from the dorm would come out, and we would dig dirt up there, and then they would be able to have enough water deep enough for a baptism. Now this is at the Caledon River. That's South Africa on the far side, and we're in Lesotho. And this separates the two countries, and it was an actual river running the whole time, and so it was a little bit deeper, but obviously not much. They would just wait around till they found the spot deep enough. And all those boys are in line for the baptism that Sabbath. We didn't get home till after supper. We had to hike a couple hours to the border, and so we had church, a second church out there, then the baptism, then we got home. So some of the Sabbaths were quite long. And here's at the one where we had dammed it up. It's that trickle that's coming off the rocks above them, that's what was coming in to fill that little pool. So they didn't have nice, clean baptistries like we have in this area, or clean lakes and things. Everyone would hike out there. It didn't matter how hot or how long the day. There was no complaining. Everybody participated in everything. This is on the Thursday night. We went out to try to dam it up before the baptisms. This is the cafeteria that was built there. The girls are doing some dishes. All the schools in the country, there's only one government school at that time. All schools were predominantly Catholic, and then the Adventist church had a few schools, and some other churches had schools. So they would get aid from different countries. The yellow containers there at the top cut off, those were corn oil from the U.S. They would get dates from Saudi Arabia, tins of fish from Norway, sardines and such. So they gave whatever was donated. This is inside the girls' dorm. Everyone got a bunk, top or bottom, metal bunks, and everybody bought a little metal box with a lock, and that's where they kept all their things. These are the wash tubs they just left in there. There was never enough water to run the shower. This is up at that's still the girls' dorm. Let's see. Okay, this is the boys' dorm. It was in pretty bad repair, and that's why they were going to build the new one. I don't think any of those windows had glass in it. It was pretty run down. This is the new boys' dorm, and we made a edge over there for a restroom, but the boys told me they later turned it into a dean's apartment because they still had outhouses out there. They're not going to waste time putting in a restroom. All we did was the four walls, and so they let that be the dean's apartment eventually. Are y'all getting tired of it? Okay, let's do a couple more. That was the last block going in right before we left. That was Seppo. He was my interpreter most of the time. We would go to different churches, and he would always come along. They had the early missionaries had planted a lot of roses, a lot of grapes, and then, of course, the cherry trees. And so we had really, really good fruit there. There's some of used to make pies as a kid, and of course I collected rocks. I still have a bag of those rocks somewhere, and there's some cakes and things. This is some of the houses. They just use mud for mortar, stack the blocks, and then put up the thatched roof. This one, this man was hired to build this house for the lady, but you can tell it's getting really narrow, the mud. He wasn't using big rocks and using some mud, so I don't know how good of a deal she got out of that one. It didn't look like that other one. So hopefully it lasted. This is would be an apartment. Each person got one half. Some of the lady teachers lived down here at the children's home. And then two other ladies had this thatch roofed apartment. But this one's a modern one. You see the box on the outside, the electric? So they had one plug and one light bulb in there. So it's a modern hut. Wow. And yeah, most people don't have the electricity there. So this is looking back, the maintenance building, the old boys dorm, and then the calf on the left. There's the cherry trees in the springtime. This is one of the churches. After about a month, we drove an hour north and then off into the woods, and we hiked up for a half hour to the top of this little mountain, and that was the Adventist church up there. And people came. There weren't really a village around, but people just walked from wherever they were to come to meet. Now, this is back at the campus at Emmanuel Mission, and the girls always sit on the right, guys on the left, and the littlest children sit in the very front with the grandmas sitting behind them, and they didn't make noise. So these are inside that. They had a Pathfinder program there. Somehow they all came up with uniforms. I don't know where they came from, and in all their meager supplies, most people only had 2 changes of clothes, and somehow they all had a Pathfinder uniform somehow. And this is on top of the mountain overlooking the school. So the boys from Children's Home would, on Saturday afternoons, they'd go hiking with me up on the mountains. They like to just do fun stuff. There's 3 of the village boys that were out there watching sheep one time, and they went up on the mountain with us. They wear these different blankets. I brought one up there if you all want to see it later. There's a hat and a blanket that you could check. Most of the blankets are wool. Okay, this is back at Maluti Adventist Hospital. And that's King Moshoshwe II with the glasses. The first king was back in 1800 something, but apparently there was a big lull between when he came into office. And it's more of a figurehead for the state, but he came to the nurses' pinning there at Maluti Adventist Hospital. And so I got to get pictures of the king. The boys at Children's Home, they don't have tractors or toys. You notice the little cars down on the ground? They put acorns to line the road. They made those little cars out of clay. They make the wheels, and they actually turn. They put sticks through them, and they just dry it in the sun, made their own little toys. And here's the boys. That's actually homemade. I used to make those for fun. We just bought golf tees, and we made triangles of wood to make the games. This one you can't see very well, but they take old fences apart, and they would smash cans together to make the wheels, and he could run behind it with that steering wheel and turn, and the wheels would actually turn. They just liked making, they didn't have much like we have here, a lot of extra things. This is the secondary school. Everyone wears uniforms for your school, so wherever you live, and this is the primary school. This is all the younger grades, and they met in the big class up here on the left. Oh. We're just about there. This was PE. They would go out jogging, and the man in the white was one of the teachers, so he would go with them. And they would just take off on a dirt road somewhere and go jogging for a while. This is the the secondary school again. They always stood out and had worship outside before they'd go into classes. And back at the cafeteria. And that was the maintenance area. That was the little addition we made that became the dean's apartment eventually. This is one of the teachers inside this primary school, standard 3, it'd be 3rd grade. I hitchhiked down to Cape Town one time. It was about 1,200 kilometers away. And it was an interesting experience for me to be able to see more of South Africa and stuff on the way. This is the actual plane I was supposed to be on and was on, but I was about the last one to board because I was waiting at the gate, they said, and no plane ever came. And I kept taking pictures of this one. And finally, I started asking around, and they said, oh, that's your plane down there. They're about to leave. So we had to run across the tarmac to get on, and somehow they didn't relay that we're supposed to be on that plane. And this is toward the end when they gave me that blanket and the hat. That was the children's home, guys. So when I moved into the kitchen there, I had an old wood stove, but they had the boys at Children's Home paint the whole apartment for me. And you can see they got blue on the countertop. It's a stainless steel sink. They got it on the stove, on the windows, on the doors. They painted everything blue, ceiling and everything. So I eventually later painted it yellow just because the stove was yellow. It's an Ellis Deluxe wood stove. And so I was able to bake things in there. And so I built cabinets under it. It was just a sink there, and built some cabinets up in the corners there, and so it made it more like a little kitchen. Then there was a toilet. I actually had a flushing toilet, but there was very little water, so it didn't much matter. Anyway, whenever you go on these mission trips, sometimes you're going to see, be in some primitive areas, sometimes not. Different ones of you going in. Some of you right into the city, I believe, Houston or different places. And some are going to be in the country more, like Kentucky. So each year you get to try something different. So wherever you go, I hope everyone has a good time with it. Okay, let's bow our heads. Dear Jesus, thank you for being with us, giving us this chance to do mission trips. Help us to be a good witness for you where we go, and be with the students tonight as they go to study hall. Help the vehicles to do well on the trip. In Jesus' name, amen.